and welcome here to MoreTalkFCB, and welcome right here today to the TalkFCB podcast that I've decided to release here. Let's see how it goes, because I think at times, there are some topics that I would like to talk about that maybe we don't really get the opportunity on the main channel, especially right now. We just lost to PSG, things aren't exactly ideal, and I just maybe thought today, let's go through a few different things over here on MoreTalkFCB in a more relaxed style. Let's take a breath, let's take a beat here, let's just try and all calm down a little bit. But we are going to be talking about that game against PSG from a slightly different point of view, though, in terms of what we saw from the crowd at Montjuic. We're also going to be discussing Julian Alvarez. I've had a lot of questions about him right now with connection to Barca. Should he be a player that we should be targeting? Is he a player that would fit in at Barca? And could he become a new signing in the future? And I also want to talk as well about some of these Xavi Hernandez rumours, of course. Xavi, of course, is somebody we pay a lot of attention to. I'm very keen to see what his next move is going to be in management. And could it actually be to Manchester United? Would that be a good fit? Would Xavi be a good coach for Man United right now? We're going to be discussing all of those topics and some more. It's coming up for you. I hope you're going to enjoy it. So sit back and relax. And let's do this. Because, okay then, let's first of all begin by talking about that Barca PSG game. Because, we've spoken a lot over on the main channel, of course, about the performance or lack of it from Barca. I'm still very disappointed about the way that we did play in that second half. I thought we came out really well. It was looking really positive, got that first goal. If we could have added to that first goal, I think it's very possible it could have been such a different game. The momentum would have been with us. I think when we allowed PSG to get back in it, the game just changed, and we didn't respond well enough there to adversity. And again, we've got to be talking about how we manage games. That's important here. When we're not at our best, when we're not absolutely perfect, how can we do better? How can we sort of understand the situation, take a step back, and maybe at times be a little bit more cautious, or at least be aware of what is around you, the threats that PSG have, the threats that opposition teams here will bring to our door. We have to understand that and learn from the mistakes that we do continue to make in these kinds of games. But guys, can we talk about one thing here that really did irritate me and frustrate me from yesterday's game? And actually, it was nothing to do with the players. I was really, really, really disappointed by the crowd at Montjuic yesterday. And what I mean by that is, the stadium was silent. It was genuinely, for a Champions League game here, a big match, a big clash against Paris Saint-Germain, that was an appalling atmosphere. It really, really was. And I've got to be honest here and say, okay, the stadium situation, it's not ideal. I know that Montjuic is not the best stadium to go and watch your football in. The running track makes things awkward. I know it's also a very, very difficult stadium there to actually get to even just watch the game. It's not good. I know that Barca this season, there's been so much confusion about the stadiums. We played at Estadio Johan Cruyff. We played now at Montjuic. We're all waiting to return to our stadium. But I think even in the past, there has been problems here with Barca creating their atmospheres, because when you look elsewhere, even in yesterday's game, you could hear the PSG fans. I do not like the feeling here of opposition away fans coming to our stadiums, and you hear them. You hear their singing, you hear their chanting, you hear their support for their team. How do you think that makes the Barca players feel? Because I also looked yesterday at the opening minutes of the game, and you got Lamine Yamal geeing up the crowd, trying to orchestrate them, trying there to cheerlead them in many ways, to get them behind the team, to get them there making some noise. And like I say, that was in the opening minutes of the match. I think if you've got Yamal doing that, needing to do that, you've got a problem there. And I think it's a real, real concern. You look at the way the Newcastle fans were when we visited St. James's Park in the last Champions League match day. That felt unbelievable. The support they were able to give their team, and actually the way that almost elevated the level of their players. It gave them more power in some ways to press and hunt the ball down, and gave their players belief. And I just think right here, Barca have got to do more. And I'm also talking here about the club, because there are lots of people who came away from that game yesterday thinking, okay, Barca don't have fan groups inside the stadium anymore. We used to have, of course, the big animation stand. And basically the idea behind that is somebody starts the chant. Somebody there, of course, is brave enough, is with a big group. And then, of course, once you get that chant going, the idea is that it spreads to all four corners of the stadium. But right now, Barca, they don't have any of that. There is absolutely no connection there. And that is why, even in big games, in big Champions League matches, we are seeing the atmosphere within Barca really, really suffer. And I do think there's a bit of a disconnect as well between some of the Barca fans and the Barcelona board as well. Of course, the Barca board right now, they have been looking to sort of raise ticket prices, I would say, as much as they possibly can. It's very possible here that they have priced out some of the fans who would be generating the atmosphere. I think that would be very, very fair to say as well. And I'm just interested to see what things are going to be like back at the Camp Nou. We all miss that stadium. We all miss the feel of it, the essence of it, the way that stadium was able to generate atmosphere almost on its own, in a big European night. But I think right here at Barca, we do have to look into this, because in big games, in big moments, you want to generate a real atmosphere. It lacked that yesterday. It felt flat. It felt eerie at times at Montjuic. And of course, that wasn't the reason why we lost this game. It wasn't the reason why Barca were, a little bit flat themselves in the second half. But surely, it could just help. It could just give us that extra 1%, that extra 2%. Maybe that could be the difference on any given day. So yeah, for me, the atmosphere yesterday, it was a shame, which I think is actually very interesting, because that does actually bring us on to the topic of Julian Alvarez right now, of course, the Atletico Madrid superstar. And actually, I was watching Atletico Madrid in the Champions League this week, and they were absolutely cruising in their Champions League game against Eintracht Frankfurt. Atleti right now, they've really picked up form, of course. They've actually scored incredibly 10 goals in their last 2 games, 5 of those coming, of course, who can forget, against Real Madrid. But yeah, even Atleti in that game against Eintracht Frankfurt, they were 3-0 up, cruising at certain points there in the second half, and still the stadium was electric. And that's what I mean. There's many clubs here, big European teams, whereby they do have that atmosphere, they do have that bouncing stadium that can really help. But yeah, let's talk about Julian Alvarez, because I get a lot of questions about him. We know that, of course, in the summer transfer window, the upcoming summer, 2026 now, that Lewandowski, he might be his last at the club. Right now, I would say that it's looking that way. He has played a bit of a bit part role so far this season. Let's see if that changes as the season goes on. But yeah, possibly next summer, we are going to be looking for a new centre forward. Now, a lot of people are saying, could Julian Alvarez be the man for that role? And what is interesting about him is that a lot of people sort of, whenever we're linked now with the big Atletico Madrid player, they'll say things like, we don't want another Griezmann. It's another situation here where Barca fans, maybe they're being fooled by an Atletico Madrid striker. And I would just say, first of all, I don't think we were fooled by Antoine Griezmann. This guy, he's not a bad player. He certainly wasn't a bad player. And even at Barca, there was bright moments for him, but it was simply about, it was a terrible time at the club for planning. The kind of transfer fees we were paying, not only for him, but we were trying to shoehorn Felipe Coutinho into that same team. Ousmane Dembele, of course, had come in for big money. And of course, as well, at that time, we had Lionel Messi, the central part of the team. We had Luis Suarez, who was still playing a huge amount of football too. So it was about really trying to fit all of these pieces together. And that's why, in the end, Griezmann ended up playing so many different roles, so many different positions, and it just didn't work out for him. But the point now would be, with somebody like Julian Alvarez coming into the club, as a natural progression to Lewandowski. One goes out, one big player leaves the club, one new one comes in. And I'd also make the point as well here with Julian Alvarez. Let's not forget here, it's not like all he knows is Atletico Madrid. He's only been there now. This is his second season at the club. He has been coached before that by Pep Guardiola at Man City, and he performed very well in a Pep Guardiola team. Now he's being coached by Diego Simeone. And what I would actually say here is that is sort of creating the most complete, the most incredible player you've ever seen in terms of a forward there, to be coached by Pep and then Simeone. He's also had the influence of Lionel Scaloni, of course, with Argentina, where he also impressed with his national team on the biggest stage at the World Cup. And I just think with Julian Alvarez, this is a player we have to be watching. It's a player here who, in my opinion, he could tick every box. The movement is absolutely outstanding. He presses. The amount he was pressing the other day. Yeah, I was watching this game against Eintracht, same, of course, against Real Madrid. The way he's able to really affect the game off the ball as well is absolutely extraordinary. And he's able to contribute in all different phases of play there. It's not just about goal scoring with him. He has really ramped up the goal scoring recently. Of course, he's banging them in for fun right now at Atletico Madrid. But it's his all-round game. He's a very capable forward there who could help Barca, in my opinion, opinion, looking here for somebody who could come in and just knit everything together, but also be that goal threat, also be that number 9, because you also don't want somebody to come in and, oh yeah, they get involved in the build-up, you know, they're very good with the passing, they're very good with the movement there, but ultimately, we still do need somebody to score the goals. We've got so much creativity, we've got so much chance creation here in this team, you still need somebody at the end of it to rack up goals, and I believe that Julian Alvarez, he is certainly capable of that. Now, would he leave Atletico Madrid? Right now, there have been quite a few rumours before Atleti picked up their form that Alvarez was unhappy, that maybe it wasn't what he expected. It was a big shift, I've got to admit. I was surprised when he went from Man City to Atleti. They are two very, very different styles of play, but I think even in itself, that shows a lot of bravery, that he was able to take on that challenge, and that he wants to be the main man. He wants to be the star here at Atletico Madrid, and now we're starting to definitely see that. Now, all he said about these rumours of him being unhappy is, I think about the short term. You know, he said, okay, you know, I'm playing well right now. The team, that's what's most important. I'm only thinking about the now. I'm only thinking about the short term. So I think for me, the door is definitely going to be open, you know, for Julian Alvarez at some point to leave Atletico Madrid. The problem, of course, would be the transfer fee. You know, they brought him in for massive, massive money there from Man City. Over 90 million euros was that transfer fee. And unlike in the situation maybe of João Felix, whereby, yeah, they paid massive, massive money for him. But unlike him, Julian Alvarez is performing. They're not going to loan us Alvarez next season, unfortunately. So Barca would have to come up with huge, huge money. But we don't know. You know, next summer, we may be in a better situation. We seem to say that every single year. It all depends really on the return to the Spotify Camp Nou. Will that happen? When will that happen? How quickly will that happen? How much money will that make the club? All these kinds of things have to be considered. But yeah, in my opinion, we should be watching him though. We should be taking a look at what he would give us, what he would offer. He is an outstanding centre forward. He is a player there that would come in and set us up for so many years. We do need a new long-term heir to Robert Lewandowski. You know, Ferran Torres is performing well right now, I would say. I think he's doing well. You know, is there an opportunity to upgrade on him? You know, would Julian Alvarez be a big upgrade on Ferran? In my opinion, I think he would. I think he definitely would. But yeah, what do you think about Julian Alvarez as a player? Would he suit Barca? Is his style of play, is the kind of centre-forward that he is, would that work at this club? And is that what we need, really, to take that next step forward? Could he take us to even greater heights, in your opinion? Let me know down below. But yeah, we are absolutely not done here, because yeah, these are the kinds of topics that I want to talk about, that maybe in the hustle and bustle, you know, every day there's a new game, it seems like, so we're always building up, we're always preparing for the next Barca game, and sometimes things just slip through the net. You know, there's topics that come out in the media that I want to talk about, that we've all got opinions about, but we don't really get to cover them in any great detail. So yeah, let's talk here about these Xavi Man United rumours. And basically it all came from Fabrizio Romano, who came out basically and said that Xavi would take the United job tomorrow. Basically implying there that, okay, if Man United picked up the phone, if they offered the job to Xavi, Fabrizio says, and we know that he has a lot of contacts, you know, he's got a lot of people in the game that know things, he says that Xavi would accept that offer immediately. And that got me thinking, really, would it work? Because what we know right now is that Man United are in an almighty mess. And Ruben Amorim, I mean, how he's still employed, I don't know. I think it's mainly because they don't want to keep changing coach. And every summer, by the way, they seem to plan and spend huge money on a whole different system. But I think the problem with Amorim is the system. You know, he does not want to change it. You've got players there who are not being utilised, not being played at their best, and he just refuses to change the approach there. And it really, really is hurting the team right now. And he is living and dying by that system. And in the end, I think it will probably cost him his job. And my point straight away here on Xavi, you know, given our experience of him as a Barcelona coach, would be, I think with him, he is incredibly flexible. He is very adaptive there, because obviously when Xavi was a player, he was incredibly precise. He was absolutely unbelievable. The footballing brain that he had as a midfielder, it's something we've never really seen before. He was absolutely extraordinary. And I think a lot of people thought with Xavi, you know, he's going to have his system, he's going to have his ideals, and he won't budge from that. He'll be very, very rigid, really, and that he wouldn't change for anyone. But I think actually what I saw at Xavi, you know, the development that we saw from him at Barca is he did try to sort of select the best system for the players that he had. He did try to adapt there. He wasn't just saying, okay, this is what I want to do, and I'm not changing it for anybody. You know, he did have to adapt, and that is what I think actually he rebuilt Barca very, very effectively. He came in, he worked with what he had. You have to remember as well, he didn't have a great amount of money. He was relying on very, very low transfer fees. He was relying there on loan deals initially, and he was playing some absolutely outstanding football. And I would actually say here, in terms of a rebuild, Xavi was at his most effective, and we saw the best football there at the beginning of his time. Initially when he came in, the way that he was able to transform the club, don't forget, Ronald Koeman, towards the end of that time, it was a disaster. We had talented players, we had good young players coming through, but it was not clicking. Xavi was able to change all of that and bring some real discipline back to the club at last, but as time went on then, and maybe when we started to aim further and higher, maybe we spent a bit more money as well, then money started to come in a little bit more, but then things started to go wrong. It was almost as though when it was time to take that next step in terms there of reaching latter stages of Champions Leagues, in terms there of achieving the absolute best performances, we needed somebody else to take that next step. But I would say he is perfect for a club like United right now, who you would say they are a sleeping giant. They've got the resources there. The size of the club is absolutely huge. The fan base there is absolutely phenomenal. And for me, Xavi going in there with all of that opportunity, all of that possibility to rebuild from the inside. And let me just tell you now, he would do a much, much, much better job at getting the best out of what United already have than Ruben Amorim is, because they have some very talented players, and I would look especially there at somebody like Mainu in midfield there, somebody coming through the system, very, very talented. The fans want to see him there in midfield, and yet because of Amorim's insistence on this system, he just can't find a way in. He can't find a way here to include him in his plans, but that's what I mean. Xavi here, I believe, would get the best out of the quality and the talent that United have, and he would find a way, I believe, to knit it together. And it is a very, very tough place to go. It's a really, really difficult club. But I think in terms of the pressure there, well, Xavi has already gone through it at Barca. Xavi understands what it means here to coach at a top club with the maximum amount of pressure on your shoulders, the intensity from the media. It would be very similar to what he experienced at Barca, but actually not as much. United in England, yeah, the papers write about them all the time. They're always on their back. They're always doing that. But I still don't think it's at the same level and same degree that Xavi got at Barca, where he knew everybody so personally. He knew the media actually face to face. He understood them. He heard everything they said. He took it at times very much to heart. And what I would also say, looking at the football, looking at the way that Xavi did play at Barca, it wasn't always, I've got to be honest here, it wasn't always the most glamorous style of play. But a lot of the time, we got the job done. You look at the league title that Xavi won. At times there it had to be a bit scruffy. At times there we had to dig in and get out results. At times it was actually more focused on our incredible defensive setup. And a lot of me does feel as though I want to see Xavi in the Premier League. I do feel as though it might actually be, weirdly, more suited to his coaching style, because even though he was an incredible player in Spain for the national team, for Barca of course, he was really such an important player in all of those systems, in all of those teams. But from a managerial point of view, I think he likes the Premier League. Xavi has spoken many, many times about watching the Premier League games, about really studying teams and opportunities, and he's made absolutely no secret that he would love to coach in the Premier League at some point. And I would like to see this man get a project. I would like to see him go in there, much like he did at Barca, and turn somebody around and really show what he can do. I don't want to see him staying away from management, going to other leagues, maybe lesser known leagues there where the pressure is not very high, where there's not going to be too much scrutiny over the performances. I want to see him go in there at a big club, somewhere where he would belong. And I want to see what he can do, because he did do a lot of good. People cannot forget that he did so much good at Barca. Yeah, when it came to that final step, I think we did need something more. We did need to go down a different route. I think that's been proven now with what we've seen from Hansi Flick. It's been an evolution of Xavi's team, but he did lay the foundations. We cannot forget that there. And thinking about a club like Man United, it is such an awkward team to go into right now. It's a team that really has been struggling for so many years. They need somebody to go in there and rip it up. They need somebody who is bold, who is brave, but is also able to adapt. He can adapt. He can be flexible, something that Ruben Amorim, he does not know the meaning of the word flexible, does he? In all honesty, But what do you think, guys? Would you like to see Xavi go on and take on that challenge of the Premier League? Do you think that Man United would be a good fit for him? Or is that a move really that he should shy away from? Should he think, okay, maybe I don't want to do that? I've seen what's happened to other coaches that have gone down that route. You think about Erik ten Hag, he was very, very highly rated when he went to Man United. Really didn't work out for him either. So should Xavi go down that route? Is he ready for that? And how do you think he would get on if he was appointed somehow, at some point maybe, as the new Man United coach? But yeah, just a few topics here today, guys, that we had to go through, that we had to discuss in a bit of detail. I hope that you have enjoyed the podcast format. It's something a bit different here on the second channel. I'm trying to just do what I can. It's not easy, obviously making the videos every day on the main channel. There's a lot of work, there's a lot of time that goes into that. I don't always get huge amounts of time to do other things, but when I can, I'm always happy to try and bring it to you and try and expand as much as possible, guys, here. So thank you indeed for that great support. Please let me know all of your feedback down below, and please do as well drop a like if you did enjoy it. I will see you soon, and look after yourself. But until next time, as always, Veshka, El Barça.